Record. Okay, and start. Okay, good evening, everyone. I just opened the session and I'll give it a few moments. I see the participants are starting to arrive. So maybe in a minute or two, then we will get going with our live stream.
And welcome to everybody who's joining us tonight on a Monday at 7. We appreciate you being here. We look forward to talking about our program. For those who are interested and have applied and are thinking about applying. So hopefully we can answer all your burning questions.
Okay. We'll start the session. I noticed our numbers have kind of slowed with the participants arriving, so we'll get started. So hello and welcome to our Trent Advantage live stream series. We're excited to welcome you to the first session of the series, and tonight's focus will be on our Bachelor of Education program. My name is Catherine Milvat, and I'm the Education Enrollment Advisor at Trent, and I'll be the moderator and host for the session. With me today from the School of Education, I have Rich McPherson, Knowledge Mobilization Education Coordinator, Carla Wagner, B.Ed Coordinator and Instructor, Heather Robinson, and Abby Powell, second-year teacher candidates and Education Student Association members. I'll be starting off tonight's session by asking our panel of experts some common questions about the B.Ed program. Then we should have some time at the end to answer any additional questions. So I invite you to add your questions into the Q&A, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. So with that, let's get started. And panelists, feel free to build on each other's responses throughout the session. So to start us off, Carla, can you please give us a brief overview of the Bachelor of Education program?
Certainly. Welcome, everyone. Our program is a 2-year consecutive. We run September through the end of April, and then again, September through the end of April. So graduation is in the second year in June. And we run a primary junior program, which is for prospective teachers, kindergarten to grade 6. And our other panel is called Intermediate Senior, and that's for teacher candidates, prospective teachers that are looking at teaching grades 7 through 12.
Thank you, Carla. Rich, what are some of the unique qualities about the education program here at Trent?
Well, unique qualities. I have been at Trent what seems like forever. Well, it's true. I'm nearing the 20-year mark. So there's a lot of great qualities about Trent that have kept me here. And I would say one of the biggest ones is sort of the sense of community that we have at Trent, and that's certainly something that I felt even as an undergrad at Trent many years ago. But when I did my B.Ed degree in this program about 15 years ago, that was something that really resonated with me. And sort of I had a different undergrad experience where I wasn't someone who necessarily got involved with a lot that was happening on campus. I lived off campus at the time for my undergrad, and so I didn't have that experience with other students within my program so much. But it was when I got into my B.Ed in hindsight, I wish I did, because, once I got into the classroom and I was with all of these like-minded professionals, and thinking about, we all wanted to be teachers. It changed immediately, and I was super thankful for that experience. And so joining in and getting to know everybody, it was highly collaborative, highly hands-on, and that was vastly different from my undergraduate degree. So that collaborative nature, and then just mixing it in with that great sense of community, and being in sort of smaller classroom settings with people. I felt the entire time throughout the program that I was well taken care of. I didn't feel like I was lost at any point. I knew that I could always approach my instructors. And I mean, I always tell a story about how after I graduated, I would call one of my past instructors, because I had a burning question I needed to ask them, and they picked up the phone and took their call on vacation. I don't recommend doing that, to call them on vacation, but they took my call and they helped me, eased my stress, my anxiety about even after the program. And so, but that was based on the relationships that I built during the time in the program. And I think that that's really unique. We meet a lot of students that come from other universities that have come from wonderful experiences, but I know that when they come to Trent, even in our graduate programs, they can definitely sense the difference in terms of how they're welcomed into the room and how they're heard. And so those are I think some pretty important qualities for a lot of us. And especially going through a world of COVID and being online and not necessarily having those connections like we're so accustomed to. And being at Trent really brought that back together, and being in the room with everyone. So, the collaborative nature of the community are definitely, super unique features for me. And I don't know if anybody else has anything else that they want to chime in on that's special to them. But that's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rich. And turning back to Carla, so hands-on and career-related experience is so important in any program. Can you tell us about the experiential learning and placement opportunities within the B.Ed program? Do students get real in-class experience? And how do students participate in these experiences?
Yes, thank you. We really work hard, I believe, in creating opportunities for teacher candidates, as we call them, to experience learning as a learner, but also as the future teacher. So sometimes it's switching hats while we're in the classroom and trying to provide a sense of what it would be like teaching that actual topic or subject within the classroom. In the first year, every teacher candidate is part of, it's called Supporting Literacy, and it's a placement that runs for 7 weeks. And for twice a week, our teacher candidates are in a local school, and they are supporting literacy learning. And it is, it can be in a small group, or it can be one-to-one with 2 students, one after the other. But the goal is so teachers can understand different strategies and supports that students might need. And even if you are a secondary teacher and English is not what you're teaching, literacy is all around us. And literacy is part of every topic, every subject. And it's an entry point. So every single teacher candidate does that as a hands-on placement. There is a course that goes along with it, and I like to describe it as just-in-time learning. So teacher candidates are learning something, let's say on the Monday, and then they're putting it in practice with children later in that week. So as they're learning something, able to try it. So they're building their toolboxes as they go and being able to come back to class and unpack what they did and learning maybe some new strategies and, celebrating what went well. Then we have what we call teaching blocks, classroom practicums. So in year one, everyone has a 4-week teaching block. And our current teacher candidates are just about ready to embark on that. They start next Monday, and it's for 4 weeks straight. And in the first year, in Block A, they're working about teaching a third to a half of the time as their of their associate teacher's workload. So you have a mentor as your associate teacher, and they're working alongside you, providing feedback, and the idea of again putting into practice what you've been learning in your courses. The second teaching block, Block B, is in the winter. It starts after March break, and it runs for 5 weeks until the end of April. And then that is an increasing time. So teacher candidates are kind of up to 50% of the time teaching their associate teacher's load. In between year one and year two, we have what's called an alternative settings placement. And this is where teacher candidates get to choose from a variety of different offerings that the School of Education provides, I guess, a list and some opportunities. But teacher candidates are also invited to pursue avenues that they're interested in. It's not meant to be a repeat of a teaching experience that you've already had. It's intended to stretch and be new learning. And we have some very interesting opportunities, and that is for 75 hours or 3 weeks, and it usually falls between year 1 and 2. There are a few exceptions, but that would happen after that last teaching block in April. And then when our teacher candidates return for their year 2, then Block C is 4 weeks in the fall, and working at about 2/3 of the time. Some teacher candidates are teaching a little bit more than that. Always observation times and support from the mentor teachers, and also from our faculty as well. And then they conclude with a 5-week Block D at the end of their year 2.
I'm going to jump in a few things if I can, Carly, because I'm just thinking, I'm looking at some of the questions in the chat, but also just thinking about, again, the program as a whole. So, the B.Ed program itself takes place in Peterborough. That's where all of your classes take place. And as Carla was mentioning, we sort of have that 9 weeks in class experience, and then we go out on placement, and you come back and do 9 weeks again, and you go out on placement. And so what is good to know is that our partnered school boards, a lot of our students are placed in the Peterborough area, but our school boards do extend down into Durham and North. So we have Kawartha Pine Ridge, the public board, and we have PVNC, which is the Peterborough Catholic Board, and that extends, it comes all the way down into Clarington. And then we have our Durham region, we have DDSB, and we have Durham Catholic. And then we also have Trillium Lakelands more north. And so that's an opportunity for people to sort of, if you are traveling, we have a lot of students who are traveling from the Durham area. We have students who are traveling from Toronto, the West End. And so when you're in the program, you learn pretty quickly who's coming from where, and you can find out, depending on where your placements are, you can really structure it. If you're in a position where you can't necessarily uproot and move to Peterborough, it's figuring out, well, how can I be in Peterborough for those 9 weeks for classes? And then, we ask that you can request to be placed in a school with one of our partners close to where you live. And we do our best to place you there. And for the most part, we do manage to get you placed there. But that allows you to sort of be home and be able to commute to that placement much closer. So that's just something to consider. And a lot of our students end up, carpooling to different schools, because usually there's a number of students who will go to the same school. Not for everybody, but for a lot of our students, that's how that's kind of built in. Thinking about the coming from Oshawa. So there's a go bus that comes straight to campus. And so typically, there are people who take the GO train, and they take the GO train to the GO bus, and the GO bus right up to Peterborough. And I'm not sure, Catherine, if you know if that stops in at the Durham campus or if there's a bus that connects the two. I used to be aware of something that did that, but I'm not too sure whether there's a direct bus from campus to campus. That's more reliable just on GO Transit. So Abby's saying no, there isn't. So you're really relying on the public transit system, but GO Transit is always coming up this way to the Peterborough campus. So that's sort of, a lot of our stuff happens in Peterborough, essentially. The other question in the chat too is thinking about how many people get accepted into the program. So we are a highly competitive program. We only have about roughly 140 to 50 spots for students. So we have a really rigorous process for reading applications to make sure that we do get the best candidates. And I might as well just, well, actually that question does come up later, so I will address that one. So stay tuned.
Just to add on to the transportation aspect of it, if you're coming from the Durham campus for it, there is a bus that will take you to the GO station. And then that one, it's Route 88 if you want to look into like the specific stops for it. But Route 88 is the one that goes from Durham area up all the way to Peterborough.
And to just clarify, is it possible for a placement in York Region or with Toronto Catholic School Board? So no, we do not have agreements with those school boards. And that has to do with other faculties of ed and their connection. Now, for the alternative setting placement where teacher candidates can build their own placement, that would be a possibility within another school board like that.
Excellent. Thank you, team, for supporting with that question. I really appreciate all of the insights. And now I turn to Heather and then Abby. Would you like to share some of your experiences as a B.Ed student? So this can be related to the unique qualities of the education program, or even related to specific experiential learning opportunities and placements.
So I'm in the IS stream of the program. And one of the things that it's already been mentioned, but the community aspect of the B.Ed at Trent is such a great aspect. Like, I have met so many people who are like-minded, who share interests, that you can have critical discussion about the profession with. And it is really just such a tight-knit community of people who are supporting each other in their learning. So that's something that during my time here has been amazing. And there's also so many opportunities to get involved in areas that are of interest to you. So whether it's organizing and running events for your peers, or learning about certain areas of interest. So with the alternative settings placement, there are a number that the school does in collaboration with groups. So I've done, there's an outdoor education one called Eco Mentorship. There's also social justice education. There's tons of different avenues where you can pursue the things that you're passionate about. And yeah, there's like, even in our classes, there's so many opportunities to be hands-on in the learning, whether it's going on field trips around campus or into the community, and putting all the learning into practice. Like, I haven't had a single class where we haven't had some sort of like actual application part to our learning. It's always, we learn about it and then we do it. And that is so important to really reinforce the skills and to make the most of it. So yeah, there's a lot of connection, community, and there's always someone who will support you in the program.
Mm-hmm. Definitely can concur all of that information, especially the point about being able to seek out further information. Our faculty is fantastic. Everybody is super approachable and you can always ask questions and it's amazing. The community goes beyond just your peers. It's the entire program. It's fantastic in that way. Also, just to add on to Heather's point about the field trip aspect, or just generally getting out of the traditional classroom space, we do a lot of classes outside. We went into the maker space in the library, as well as the one for the School of Ed itself, and you get a lot of hands-on experience in those spaces as well. In general, there's just a lot of opportunity. So it's a great place if you would like to try things out and get constructive feedback on how to do it better, and also how to just work with the skills you have. So yeah.
Catherine, I'm going to ask you this question. It's your turn, I believe. So I'm going to ask you. But thank you, Abby and Heather, for those responses. So the question is, can I apply to both primary, junior, intermediate, senior, or do I need to choose just one of those?
Okay, thank you, Rich, for the question. I appreciate that. So to respond, so you're welcome to apply to both primary, junior, and intermediate, senior. And if you have applied to both, we do ask that you prioritize your choices. So on the application, it's going to ask you to rank order your choices, first, second, third, so on and so forth. And from our perspective, from the two Trent programs, we're going to be assessing your first choice first. So how you rank order your choices in terms of our two Trent programs is really important, because that's where we're going to start our assessment. We'll look at your first choice first and then move to your second option. Now, there might be some instances where you might get offered your second choice over your first. For example, if you did apply to both the intermediate senior and primary junior, but maybe you didn't have enough credits for your teaching subjects. So in that instance, we would automatically start to consider you for your primary junior. So in that case, you might get offered your second choice over your first, based on the criteria. And also just to add on, since we're talking about teaching subjects, for intermediate senior, you need to have 2 teaching subjects. Your first teaching subject, you will have to have 5 full credits. And in your second teaching subject, you will have to have 3 full credits. Trent, we do offer 14 teaching subjects for you to choose from. And they are listed on our website and within the TEAS application guide. I will put links in the chat closer to the end of the presentation that matches up with all the information as well. So thank you, Rich, for the question. And now I'll ask you a question.
No, not yet. Wait, hold on.
Okay. Sorry.
No, so I was gonna say, and this is something that we do talk to people. Sometimes you might be on the fence of whether you want to teach primary, junior, or intermediate, senior. You don't know. And so something to consider though too is you have the option. Let's just say you went through the primary junior certification. There's additional qualifications that you can do afterwards to get different specialists for different subjects. And some of those pieces might give you those qualifications to be able to teach at the high school level. A little bit different, the reverse. Just because in a primary junior program, you're learning to teach all subjects. And so just that's something to consider. So if you're, I can throw that link in the chat as well. But AQ courses are offered by almost all faculties of education, all universities. They're usually all virtual, and you can't take them until you're a certified teacher. But that's an option to you if you are on the fence in terms of deciding whether you want to teach little kids or teach the big kids. So you do have options. You're not, once you go, just go under PJ, don't think that you can't do the alternative. So, Carla has her hand up.
I just wanted to answer a question that was in the Q&A. The question is, are students responsible to find their own placements? And can we have exposure to teaching different grades? So just to clarify, the School of Education arranges your teaching placements, except for that alternative setting, which is open to many options, but we do organize all of the others. And yes, we give you a balance because we are certifying you either kindergarten to grade 6. So our goal is that over your 4 placements that you have a kindergarten placement, you have a placement that's within primary grade 1 to 3, and you have a placement that is in junior, grade 4 to 6. If you're intermediate senior, it's working on having an intermediate placement, which is grade 7 or 8, where you could potentially be the homeroom teacher. And then there are 2 teachables in for the senior. So it is 1 placement in each of those. And then for both of those sections, the other placement could be an overlap of one of those. But the goal is always to give that balance and mixture so that our teacher candidates are prepared for teaching in the real world.
All right, perfect. Thank you, team. So turning to Rich, so what are some of the career prospects for teachers right now?
The career prospects are very good. And that's not just because of the pandemic. Those numbers prior to the pandemic were already going up. Maths and sciences are always highly sought after, and as we know, French is as well. And so those the stats, as I remember them, 5 years ago, were almost 85% of teacher candidates who are graduating sort of in the sciences and mathematics. They were coming out with full-time employment. That doesn't necessarily mean permanent, but you were coming out and there were jobs for you. And that's across the province, and I would venture across the country. And so that was going up. And even for those who were coming out in the primary junior, which there are a lot more teachers in that area that are coming out, that was close to almost 70% were getting full-time work. And I know from speaking with our graduates, it was like close to like 95% of them were coming out with full-time work. And that was just a couple of years ago. And so flash forward past a pandemic where there's been a lot of retired teachers moving out, and just general as it is across every public sector of people moving and shifting through different careers. There's a lot of openings in education, and so we're actually at a point where I've talked to some not teacher candidates, graduates, teachers from our program who actually have so much opportunity that they are kind of testing the waters in different places in different regions, just so that they can see if that's the best place for them in their future, which is a really new idea. No, that was not around when a lot of us were going through this process. So there's a lot of jobs available, and I even say that to folks who are at the undergrad level who have 6 years ahead of them before they can graduate, that the prospects for teaching are going to be very high for a very long time. So you're certainly in a good position coming into this program. And I know as someone who has worked with lots of professionals across Ontario for different teaching unions, and everyone knows a Trent grad and loves having a Trent grad, knowing where they came from and what they were learning in their education department. So that will work well for you as well, getting into the field, but the prospects are good.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich, for the positive news. So now I kind of turn to the team as a whole to help answer the next question. So feel free to share. So why study at Trent School of Education?
Anybody jump in? I feel like I already, gave my piece.
Well, I think just going back to the point about opportunity is that I never would have thought that I would have these experiences until I got into this program. Not only just from like a practicum side of things, but in general, like the well-being program. Heather and I actually got to partake in running one of the workshops for it, which was very exciting. And it was something that we didn't realize that we could do, but when it was offered to us, that's awesome. And it was a great learning opportunity just in general, to kind of approach a situation in that way, as opposed to a classroom environment. So there's always different things to try out in this program.
Yeah, and jumping off of that, there's so many things to try out, but there's also so many people to encourage you to try those things. Like one of the biggest things is I haven't had a single prof who hasn't been like, what is something you want to go for and how can I support you? So Trent is really good about supporting the students and teacher candidates and really making sure that we get the most out of the experience.
I guess what was I going to say? I think it's important to talk to students that not everybody when they go through their B.Ed knows whether they want to be in a classroom. And so there are a lot of opportunities, I think, while you're here during those 2 years through the alternative settings placement that we offer that encourages you to do something outside of the normal classroom. And just the people that you connect with on campus, you start to get a sense of how your Bachelor of Education degree is quite valuable in other areas. And if I can, speak from my own experience, that's what played out for me. I ended up teaching in the elementary classroom, but at the same time, I was able to do research work with one of my instructors that taught me math, and so I started doing research work for the university, and then the work that I was doing there actually transferred into multimedia and working on professional learning resources for teachers. And so I started working with different organizations because my passion was really in the arts and media. And so I was able to use my background in education and come with that lens into that field of multimedia, which really served me well and the people that I worked with. And that sort of brought me back to the university and being able to use all of those skill sets to what I do now. So you don't have to necessarily jump into the classroom. Like I answered last time, we need you. We need teachers in the classroom for sure. But you recognize that might not be for you. You might love the idea of what a Bachelor of Education can provide you, because it does give you a ton of great skills to walk away with. But those can be applied to other places in education where that fresh, new, young perspective and the tools that you come with is really valuable in that sector. So that's just something else to consider. And I think that Trent as a whole, at least for me, it's always offered that flexibility to sort of step outside the box and maybe go, hey, maybe I want to do this. And you have that support from the people that are here.
Definitely just adding on to the mentorship aspect of it. All of our professors practice exactly what they want you to take in from their classes. You always have a firsthand experience person in front of you who is sharing what they know and are always passionate about it. And they reflect exactly what you want to be doing. So you will always find somebody who resonates with your teaching style or like the way that you would like to approach the classroom or alternate placement in general. And there's always going to be that support again. So I just wanted to add that in there.
And I think it's also making a connection between what's theory and what's practice and what's practical. And it's a fine balance, I think, sometimes, and depending what the course is, but it's very important that to instructors that you're walking away with an understanding and that you feel capable and that you're ready to go.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for responding to the question there. I appreciate that. So in terms of my next question, I just wanted to take a moment and kind of preface it just briefly because it's to do with the admissions requirements. So when you're applying to the Bachelor of Education, in terms of the GPA requirement, we're going to be looking at your last 10 full credit equivalents. And that's going to make up the academic portion of the application. Now, some schools do use your best 10. We're going to use your last 10. So essentially 10 full credits is equivalent to your last 2 years of full-time study. So approximately 20 semester courses. And that's what we're going to use to calculate your average. And from our perspective, your average is 50% of the assessment. The minimum average that we do require is a 70%, which is about like a B- or so. And that's the general admissions requirements from an academic standpoint. And the other half of the assessment is what's called the profile of experience. Now, every institution has something slightly different. So when you're looking through the TEAS application, ensure that you're looking through all the requirements for the institutions. And from our perspective, it's called the profile of experience. And it's something that we do give you access to after you apply. So you fill out the OUAC TEAS application, and then from there, we'll send you an acknowledgement email a few days later with access to what's called the My Trent portal. And from there, you'll be able to access the documents. Now, the structure of the profile is primarily two components. The first component is a profile experience listing, and it's similar to a resume format. And it's going to ask you to list the 5 most relevant teaching-related or life experiences that you identify as significant in preparing to be an educator. And each of these 5 experiences, you're allowed to include 100 words. It's each in the fillable boxes. And the second part is the critical reflection section. And this is where you're asked to reflect on 3 of the 5 experiences you previously listed and expand on them and identify how they impacted you. And this section encompasses 500 words. So now I turn to Rich. So since experience is weighted 50% of the assessment, what would you say makes an applicant profile stand out?
Ooh, I was giving away my secrets. No, I don't have secrets. Our process is quite, like I said earlier, it's pretty rigorous. We have multiple people reading your application, and that's just to ensure that we're all seeing the same things. And so, when I'm reading an application, I don't know whether you have a 70 average or a 95. I don't know that. I don't have access to that information. And I don't want access to that information because for us at Trent, and like Catherine said, different universities look at different things, and what their research and data shows them works for them, and what we do works for us. And so, for my personal opinion, just because you hold a 95 doesn't mean you're going to be a great teacher. And so it's really a balance. And so when I'm reading a profile, I'm looking for just, I know this is, it's hard to arrive to this place, but it needs to jump off the page at me, because sometimes the experiences. I know people are asking about what experiences it might be an advantage or disadvantage to me, and I don't think I think it's how you're able to articulate how those experiences have shaped your sort of your mindset, your philosophy on why you think you're going to be a great educator. What is it that is unique about you that you're going to bring to the table? And sort of maybe change up what your experience was like for the better. And so, I always say, like, we read applications from people who it's their second career. They're coming from a chemical engineering background. They don't have any volunteering in education related experiences, but they have a life story that they're able to put into that reflection piece, that you're just like, yes, like this speaks to me, that they get it. They want to be an educator for positive social change, inclusivity, all of that. And so but again, that's how I see them. Other readers have similar things that they see, but they might look at those experiences as something that does have a lot of weight in what you do. And so that's why we have multiple readers. So it sort of balances itself out, so that when we do send out those offers, we know that we have a really holistic approach to who we're choosing and who we're offering to come into our program. So like I said, for me, like I'll tell you right out of the gate, I'm not someone who likes to hear all the buzzwords that you can Google and pick up. No, we can see what is genuine. We've read enough applications to know when someone really wants it, and so that's all I can say is really think about how those experiences have shaped your thinking about why it is you think you're going to make a great educator, and make real positive change.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. And just to reiterate in terms of access to the form, so this is something we give you access to after you apply. So after you fill out the UACT's application, then we send you the acknowledgement email to access the MyTrent portal, and then the forms will be available on that portal. Please check your junk file. For some reason, sometimes the acknowledgement emails land there. So if you waited a few days and you still haven't received anything, please check your junk file as it might be there. And one other piece I did want to mention in terms of that profile of experience, we do ask for the names and email addresses of 2 references. And that's just the last piece of that profile of experience. And then in mid-December, we do send them a short email reference survey to complete, and that usually comes back to us in early January. So that's the last piece of that profile of experience.
And
then
I was just going to say, just along the lines of thinking about the application still and looking at some of the questions. Really, so I see, does co-op count towards this? Does, having an ECE background? Those are all great education related experiences. If you can, again, it comes down to how you feel that has been, not only educational for you, but others, and how that links to your philosophy. And so I'm not going to tell you that, no, that's not good, because I don't know what that means to you. So if you feel that has transformed the way that you think, absolutely put it on there. And I think that all of those pieces, again, that are education related, of course, they're going to speak right to, what you're applying for. So those are for sure going to be good. But I think it's when I find applicants who list a whole bunch of things and they don't even talk to any of them, then that tells me then maybe you just listed a bunch of experiences because they were education related, but you didn't speak to them. So why not? So it's being able to sort of link those pieces. Not to say that, because you only have so much you can write about, so you can't write about all of them. But you know what I'm saying? There needs to be that clear connection in your application, and so really it's up to you and what you think will be impactful.
And all of your experiences don't have to be quote educational in manner. I can remember a teacher candidate who certainly had volunteer experience, but they had been a manager at Tim Hortons, and those transferable skills of being able to work with people, and they were able to talk about that as an important piece that brought them in this path. So if yours aren't all sort of school check the box, that's okay. And my cat's visiting again.
Excellent. Thank you both for supporting with that response. I really appreciate that. In terms of, so who should students contact if they have any questions? I will put the email and the contact information in the chat, but it's educationadmissions@trentu.ca. That goes directly to me. So I'll be responding to those emails as they come in. So if there's anything that pops up as you're applying or you're wondering about, feel free to send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Now I'd like to turn to Heather and Abby with support with the last question here. So can you offer any advice for prospective students in terms of their application process and as they kind of move towards teaching and education?
My biggest thing, and I will say this until forever, is to always ask questions. There's never a bad question, and that's the biggest thing in teaching in general, is there's never a bad question. Ask your profs, ask your peers, ask our School of Ed staff up in the office. Like, there's so many people to contact and get insight from. Use your resources and ask them questions.
Mm-hmm. Another thing is really follow what you're passionate about, and that goes with your time in a B.Ed program or just when you're doing your application. Write about the things that matter to you, follow the paths that matter to you, and then that makes it really meaningful, and it will be a great experience no matter where you end up.
Excellent. Thank you both. And before we do get to the Q&A, I'm just going to put some information and some links in the chat. But team, if there's some questions that you've noticed that you'd like to respond to right away while I paste in the chat, please feel free.
Sure. So I have one here just from Evelyn about just sort of how we teach about inclusion and so I think it's important to note that Trent is heavily rooted in Indigenous teachings and learning and knowledge, and so that in itself has always been a part of our programming. And even more so because we do have an Indigenous concurrent Bachelor of Education program, and those students come through our Indigenous studies and then come into the B.Ed years with all Bachelor of Education students. And so there's a lot of really nice dovetailing there. And Heather and Abby can probably speak to some of those specific courses that we do in terms of, we do have other courses like environmental sustainability, and a lot of that stuff is taken outdoors, which is wonderful. And so there's a lot of learning on the land, and working with elders at the university, and really bringing that land-based knowledge into the teaching practice, and shifting our pedagogy and how we see education for all of our learners. And I think it's important to recognize too that Trent has always been very socially active in terms of speaking out about injustice, and our program is built upon those principles of social justice. And so a lot of our faculty, I invite you to follow us on our social channels, because we do speak out about different things that are happening in the world, because a lot of that is passionate to a lot of our instructors and our teacher candidates at the School of Education. So we certainly are heavily involved and speak up when we need to. And so we also do have an EDI committee within the School of Education, and that extends beyond throughout Trent as well. And so I think that feeling of inclusiveness is present. It's there, and we certainly. I feel like that is something that we discuss throughout all of our courses and subjects. And I don't know if anybody else has anything to add from experiences and in that learning within your courses.
Oh yeah. So pretty much every class I've taken during my time during the B.Ed at Trent has looked at things through a diversity and social justice lens. And it really is in all the learning that we do. And yes, like Rich was saying, we spend a lot of time on the land. We go outside a lot. We go into the community. We learn from community members. And I think that really lends to learning diverse perspectives, because all of our students, or people who we are educating if we're not in a traditional classroom, are very from diverse perspectives. And so we talk about that a lot in our classes. We have the Indigenous Environmental Sustainability course. We also have a socio-cultural perspectives course, where we look at different diverse and social justice issues that come up in the classroom setting. So yeah, it's really in everything we do.
And if you're looking for ways to introduce that into your teaching practice beyond those classes, we have tremendous amounts of resources everywhere, both physical and on media, where you can access those. And those are always accessible.
And so, because you're both talking about courses, and there's a couple questions in here about how often are my classes a week? And I know that, you can speak well, now that you're in your second year, you can speak to both years and how that sort of shifts a little. So I don't know if you want to speak to that. What does a week look like?
So I know that it's different from PJ to IS depending on the courses itself. Every year we get a email sent out that has like a list of options for what you would prefer, kind of thing, for your class schedule. So like Fridays off, no classes after 7 p.m., things like that. And from there you rank them, and they try their best to make that in there. So I personally put in, I would like to have a day off, and I have had a day off every semester so far, which was lovely. On top of that, it's for the most part in the middle of the day so far, for me at least. I know that last year was more morning heavy, but yeah, for the most part it's around that.
Yeah, there's quite a range depending on, like, if you're an IS, your teachable subjects, they all fall at different times, things like that. But I do find that there is lots of time in your day still when you have the classes, and you might end up having a class every day of the week. But when that happens, you do still have lots of time in your day outside of those courses.
And I will say that, something that we do tell teacher candidates at the very start, before you even start the program, we have a launch day in the summer, before the summer. And so we do stress that you're entering into a full-time, in-person professional program. And so that is really where your focus is. The idea of being able to do full-time work is not going to happen, unfortunately. You just won't have the time for that. Part-time work, maybe. It depends on the flexibility and your ability, and we understand that many of you have to work. We know that that's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough on you. So it's manageable. We know, obviously a lot of people are working part-time, but that's where they're able to, maybe if they can, have that happen. Like Abby was saying, if everything's happening during the day, then some of those evenings can be part-time and on the weekends. But you have those opportunities. You do have a lot of break time in between, your practicum over the holidays. There's almost like 3 weeks to a month. And then you have those 4 months in between year 1 and year 2, where you can, if you're able to have that flexibility with your employer. But we certainly do stress that, full-time work is really not manageable at all. Part-time work is manageable for some, but it's going to be pretty tough with the workload that's expected of you. Now, I always say, as long as you're passionate, about education, and the work that you're doing, that stuff will come easy, but there's still a lot of it to do, and that will consume a lot of your time and your mental capacity. And at the end of the day, if you're in a position where you're lucky enough where you don't need to work, then take that in for your well-being, and don't push yourself, because it is an intense program, and so that's something to consider, what your classes might look like. So yeah.
And thank you all. I just wanted to jump in with a response to kind of the timelines question, in terms of like offers and how they roll out and such. So the application does close December 1st, so still a few weeks away. And then we have until December 8th for documentation to come in. So that's your transcript, your profile experience, and your course list. So after that, then the assessment takes place. We start sending out offers early February, usually February 1st. And February 1st is the first day that B.Ed institutions through the OUAC are able to send out first round offers. And then that goes into the first rounds can happen up until March 1st. March 1st is the last day that institutions can kind of send out their first round. So between February 1st and March 1st is when the first rounds kind of start to roll out. And then after that, a lot of schools will kind of revisit their numbers and see kind of what happens next, and then subsequent rounds will roll out afterwards. So no offers will be released until February 1st from all institutions. That's the earliest date that institution can send out offers, and they have until March 1st to send out their first round. So there's still some time, not only to get your application in, as that's December 1st is the deadline for the OUAC application, then that gives all the institutions time to do their assessment, and then to start to send out offers between February 1st and March 1st. So just to address the question about timelines.
Does anyone want to take French questions? So I think that, at the primary junior level, I don't think that there's much required, but I could be wrong, for French.
So it depends if that person is referring to teaching French immersion, or because the French is not part of the PJ courses, it would be something that you take after you have successfully completed your Bachelor of Education. And then one of those courses Rich was talking about in the beginning, an additional qualification course. You take French as a second language part 1. And then most school boards, you have to pass a proficiency test, and it's often both an oral test and a written test en français, and some even do interviews in French as well if it's specifically looking at teaching French. So I hope that helped answer that question.
And then I just noticed, I responded to one of those, one that's in the chat as well in regards to the references. They can be professional references, as typically that would be the case, like a supervisor, for example, rather than an academic reference, unless you maybe were a TA for a specific class. And the references that you include have to be individuals that can speak to the experiences that you included within your profile experience and critically reflected upon, because that's the prompts that they're going to be given from the questionnaire. So references will be professional, and they just have to speak to the experiences you previously described. And then a couple other questions. Okay, so about transcripts, I've seen a few in regards to ordering transcripts. So if you attended university within Ontario, they can be ordered through the OUAC TEAS application. And from there, the OUAC will contact the institution they previously attended and distribute them to the institution that you're applying to. And that's perfectly fine. We recommend doing that because it's an automated process. The OUC takes care of that. You just have to indicate yes, that you want the transcript to be ordered, and then they will distribute it. If you attended university outside of Ontario or outside of Canada, you will need to contact your previous institutions and have them send your transcript to us. We do require official documents, so you can get them to send it via email as long as it comes from the registrar's office. That's considered official, or they can mail it in hard copy as well. Either will be acceptable. Again, it just has to come from that specific institution directly. So it can't be like a scanned document that you emailed or an envelope that you open the official envelope and place it in another envelope. So it just has to come from the previous institution directly. And then as kind of more questions come up as you're going through the application process, feel free to send education admissions an email. I did include that within the chat, but it's educationadmissions@trentu.ca. And then I can support you kind of through the process if you have questions in terms of the OUAC application, or you're wondering about kind of the documentation that's required, or even just wondering if documents have been received. I could definitely check in on that and let you know. And just kind of looking at the time, it does look like we have reached the end of our presentation today. So I would like to take a moment to thank the members of our panel for being here with us and sharing their knowledge about the B.Ed program. This session has been recorded and it will be posted on our 2023-2024 Livestream webpage shortly. So if you wish to review the session again or view any of our other Trent Advantage live streams, which will be forthcoming. Additionally, as a reminder, the application is open on the OUAC webpage, and our campus that offers the B.Ed program is Peterborough, and the deadline is December 1st, so it's less than a month. That's when the application on OUAC has to be completed by, and then from there you do have an extra week to submit your required documentation. So that profile experience, the course list, and if you were ordering your transcript from your institution directly, it has until December 8th to come in, so another week. And I would also like to invite you to explore our campus virtually or in person. We do offer tours 6 days a week to give you the opportunity to view our beautiful campus and ask questions along the way. The tours link was also previously placed in the chat. If you do have questions after the session, again, please email educationadmissions@trentu.ca. I'm happy to help. And again, that's also in the chat. So I do want to thank you for attending. And again, thank you to our panelists. And I do hope that everyone has a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck. Best of luck. be sure to reach out if you have questions, like Catherine mentioned, and follow along to see and watch our program unfold online.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.